very good morning to you. Welcome to Motivation Monday, where we bring you challenging conversations and inspiring stories. Imagine we are in December already. Wow, the year is coming to an end, but also the Christmas festivities and the Christmas cheer has already begun. Have you put up your Christmas tree yet? Have you begun buying new clothes for your children? Well, you better begin soon, because Christmas is here with us. And guess what we are talking about today? We are talking about redeem your time. Redeem your time. I know. Usually conversations around time and planning and redeeming your time, these conversations happen at the beginning of the year when we are making resolutions. But you know, even with 1 month remaining to the end of the year, you can still do something with the rest of the weeks that are remaining in 2024. And that is why this conversation is crucial, not just for days ahead, for years to come, but even for 2024. And our guest today is one you want to take a seat and listen. He is the Group Chief Operating Officer for Hass Petroleum. And today he will be helping us appreciate this conversation on Redeem Your Time. We'd love to engage with you, your questions, your comments, even as we continue to have this conversation. And so do send us your feedback, your comment. 20316 is our SMS line. 0786316316 is our WhatsApp line. But for now, let's get right into this. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, it's a privilege and an honor to have us sitting with you.
Asante.
Yes. So for the sake of our audience, I know I just made a bit of an introduction, but help us just appreciate, who Mr. Solomon Osundwa is.
Yes, as you've heard, my name is Solomon Osundwa. I'm a father of 3 children, various ages, 23, 14, and 12. A husband of June Wangari. Currently, I work in the petroleum industry as the Group Chief Operating Officer of Hass Petroleum. I'm a born-again Christian, involved in various ministries at Nairobi Baptist Church. I'm also on the board of BTL, that's Bible Translation Limited. I'm on the board of Capro, and also involved with Focus. Do I keep going?
All right, we will keep going as we continue. But thank you. That's an elaborate. How are you able to do all those things? You're in various boards. You have a significant responsibility. In fact, now that you've mentioned you're the group COO for Hass Petroleum, a group of counties, countries. What are we talking about?
Hass Petroleum is found in 8 countries, including Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, Tanzania, DRC, Malawi, and South Sudan. And we have an operating office also in Dubai. So I look after those countries, basically the commercial business, because all the country managers in the respective countries report into me. And Hass Petroleum has a local shareholder, but also has the Omani government through a company called OQ, which has 40% stake in Hass Petroleum. Yes.
All right. Okay. Thank you for that. That must be quite something. 8 countries. Now we are talking about redeeming time. And just as we begin this conversation, one of the statements I have heard said is, whether you're rich or poor, whether you are a CEO or you are, sort of at the lowest level of an organizational structure, one thing that we've all been given in equal measure is time, 24 hours. What are your thoughts about that statement and that assertion?
That statement is correct, because indeed we all have 24 hours. The only debate is how you use your 24 hours, how you can make it more efficient and more productive. And I believe that's what the book says, the definition of time management, which indeed it is. Okay. And now part of what we were talking about just before we began this show is a bit of your own history into your working life. And I'm interested in that because it touches a bit on this whole idea of time. And so I want you to touch on part of your working life and this idea of time. Yes, the 24 hours we've been given, but time as well as an opportunity and the thing that sort of we leverage, so to speak. Yes, in terms of my working life, earlier in my career, managing time was even harder because the lower you are, then your bosses can always mismanage your time for you, in the sense that you may not have been planning to go for a certain meeting or to see a certain customer. Your boss then decides you're going to do it, so it gets trickier. And even in terms of delegation, things can be delegated to you. But as you go higher up the hierarchy, you're able to organize your schedule a bit more. You can even plan your year's schedule, and it might not be mismanaged or disorganized. You can delegate and just ensure you don't have clutter and get other people working for you. But I think when you're younger, what you need to do is to utilize the time well, because you're able to absorb more. Like when I was younger, I used to work maybe until midnight or 1 a.m. I had the energies, and that hard work has then remained as a foundation. So that nowadays when people in sales give me feedback, I already know those geographies. I've traveled almost everywhere in this Eastern Africa, even if it's deep in DRC, whether it's Beni, Butembo, or wherever else. I've been there. I've visited customers all over Kenya. So I have a feel of just that hard work helps you when you're younger and not refusing the tasks you're given. But managing your time is much harder when you are lower down the hierarchy. But right now where I am at, I tend to be more at the executive level. Whether it's a board, I'm perhaps the chair or an influencer in the board or the companies I work for, I'm able to work on the schedule. Like I think all the critical meetings that we were going to have this year, they were already on a schedule, and I knew what I'll be doing for the rest of the year. Like in a week's time, we'll be having our strategy meeting as Petroleum, and it's something that we decided in December last year.
Oh, wow.
And it's a culture I built from one of the companies I had worked for. I had worked for Kenol Kobil, and they had an interesting culture where they used to plan everything. And that's one of the positive things I learned from them, yes.
Yeah, I like that. And it's just brought something to my mind, the cumulative effect of time, because you've touched on the fact that when you were younger, you know, there were things you had to do, and sort of that has paid off, you know, to where you are. Just speaking to that space in terms of decisions that we make today as regarding time and the influence that those decisions have, you know, 10 years from now, 5 years from now, 15 years from now, that kind of a thing.
Yes, I think the decisions that you make earlier, even if it's studying, if you're able to absorb more, you'll remember more. Even in terms of scripture, the verses that I learned when I was in high school, I still remember. But the ones I try to learn now, I struggle. So it shows if you use that time, especially the days of your youth, better, you're able then to have a proper foundation. And in terms of work, because I started my career with Unilever, that's when it was East Africa Industries. So most of the marketing strategies in terms of marketing positioning, branding, and all that is because, again, I dedicated a lot of time learning. And when work was given to me, I still put in time to learn. So that then builds a foundation that you can then use later. Even later, when your team gives you a story, you can be able to tell whether it's authentic or not, or whether it will work or not. So yeah, that foundation really helps much later in life.
Yeah, and is the reverse true as well, such that if one then, and you know, you could have an example of someone, we don't have to mention names, but like, you know, a situation where you've seen an individual who squandered their time, say at their earlier years, and now, you know, at a peer level, so to speak, there isn't much, so to speak, to show as pertains to their life in whatever area. Could be career, could be family, could be, you know, our Christian journey, whatever arena.
Yes, I've seen a number of people who've squandered their time. Like, I won't mention names, but the two people I joined with in Caltex, when I joined Caltex in many years back in 1995, one of them invested their time in doing shady deals, maybe stealing pumps, etc. Eventually, that caught up with him, and I think even had legal issues. And you can see he wasted his time, and it's just multiplied because in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
So I have those examples. I have friends, some that I'm supporting, who instead of dedicating their time on their children, they did other things that were not so right. Then you can now see their children are struggling. So there are consequences on how you use your time. If you choose not to use your time with your children, again, they could go wrong or have issues with you. And I'm not saying it's irredeemable, but you still then need to spend more time redeeming, maybe when you have less energies.
Yeah. I like that, when you have less energies and then you need to even exert yourself more. We were just talking earlier, and you mentioned at some point you were sort of holding two significant positions. You were, is it the MD for Nissan Kenya? And you are also in another organization, it skips my mind. But just tell us a bit about that. You know, what did that season of your life look like?
Yes, there was a season where I was initially on the board of Nissan Kenya.
Okay.
And at the same time, I was the regional director of VTTI, which is a VTOL company that manages their storage. So during that season, Nissan Kenya, the MD left, so they asked me to be the caretaker MD. And I was also the regional director of VTTI. So it ended up, I agreed to be the MD of Nissan Kenya, mainly as a caretaker. That was for a period of about a year. So it meant that theoretically I was like a CEO of two companies at the same time. And both companies were aware that I was working for the other company. I was in an interesting situation where I was paying NHIF twice and NSSF twice and on 2 medical covers. But it was quite challenging. The only thing is that the VTOL group had already embraced virtual meetings. So I could still have many virtual meetings with the team. Because I was the only team member that was seated, though having oversight, I was seated in Nairobi. And I had negotiated that in my contract because the rest of the team members were in Mombasa. But I didn't want to be separated from my family, so I was in Nairobi. So I will still have virtual meetings with the team, visit Mombasa occasionally, and still run Nissan. But it was very tough because there were many tenders. Nissan Kenya was relatively a new entity that had been formed after Nissan pulled out of DT Dobby. It was also a sector that I had not really worked in because I've been in fast-moving consumer goods sector before. Then I moved to the petroleum industry. I've spent the bulk of my time, so I had to spend a lot of time learning what was going on. But just managing time when I have my meetings, maybe waking up earlier and delegating. Because one thing that I've learned with time is whatever I can delegate, I do delegate, then I follow up. And the people I delegate to, I ask that when they get stuck, they escalate, and then I would give them guidance. And then I support them, and I still allow my team members to make mistakes, provided the mistake they were making was with a genuine motive. Then that allows them to thrive and they're able to work harder for the company and myself, and that way I'm able to free up my time. Yes, so to a large extent I balance that because of scheduling the meetings. I think when we were chatting, one of the things I told you, the difficult point was when you have visitors. Since our office for the VTOL group was in Netherlands, there was an occasion when we had visitors coming from Netherlands and also from South Africa for Nissan at the same time. So that's the only time I got really challenged, because you have the bosses are coming and you need to spend time with them and how to explain to one that I was not to be with you for 3 hours because I'm with this other company. Was, although they were aware, but it was a bit tricky because naturally they expect full attention. So that's the only time I got challenged, and they also control their own schedules. I was not in control of their schedules. If I was, then I would have planned it in a way that they came different days.
All right, I like that, and that's such a good example. And I know, somebody's just there maybe marveling at how colorful, so to speak, your career progression is. And I want us to take a break, listen to a song, and then get back to this conversation and just speak into different individuals listening, because people are listening and they're coming from different perspectives. Some are in top management, some are in lower levels within an organization, but still this conversation around time is for everyone. Motivation Monday, where we bring you challenging conversations and inspiring stories. And today's conversation is a challenging one. We are talking about time. Yes, your time, and how to redeem your time. In fact, this is such a useful conversation because the year is coming to an end. But with this 1 month, perhaps we squandered the 11 months that have already gone past. But is there a possibility that we can do something to redeem at least what remains of 2024? And perhaps what remains of the rest of our years. My name is Elijah Mokai, your host, and our guest today is Mr. Solomon Osundwa, the Group Chief Operating Officer for Hass Petroleum. And what a conversation this is already proving to be. I'm wondering, what are you learning already? In what ways are you being challenged as regards your time? Please do share with us. 20316 is our SMS line. 0786 316 316 is our WhatsApp line. But for now, let's get back to this conversation. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, before we went on that song break, you're just helping us appreciate, this space that you're in at one point where you have two significant responsibilities. I think one of the things I like that you shared is the fact that you are able to schedule your time. I believe there's no way you can sort of, as you said, theoretically speaking, being a CEO for two companies, be able to run that efficiently unless there's an elaborate usage and utilization of time. But somebody's listening, as I mentioned, and they're like, but that is not my story. I am, like you said, my time is controlled. I do not have significant responsibilities in terms of management. But when we come to this whole idea of our appreciation for time, how does this conversation still help that individual that feels, but I'm not like Mr. Solomon Osundwa?
Yes, individuals could be in different circumstances.
Yeah.
One, it could be you're not in a position to schedule, and sometimes it's your boss who kind of mismanages your time for you. And what you should do is to be able to anticipate what your boss needs to do, and if you can then be ahead of him or her, and then tell them, can we work on a schedule, so that you try and plan everything out and support them. Or if you know that there's a certain report that is needed at a certain time, you try and do it in advance. Then you then have slots for emergency work that you may be given. So then you can then be able to succeed. But also there are principles of just being efficient. You try and be efficient since you know the other inefficiencies. Like, for instance, if somebody called me on my phone now and said that they need certain support from, let's say, Pastor Mokaya, rather than saying, okay, I will call him, then come back to you. Nowadays, the phone allows 3 people to speak at the same time. So I'll just add that other person on the call. And say, and if they pick, then you then sort that out in 2-3 minutes, rather than, again, spending double the time, because if I have to call you, then call that one back, then go back and forth. You end up spending more time. So it's something I did, I think, yesterday when someone called me and we were able just to have a teleconference. So you use technology a bit more and more efficiently. And also try and make decisions with 60% of the information, because anytime you try and make information with 100% means you're not a very good manager. Because anybody can make decisions with 100%. But you just weigh the risk and the return and try and make decisions as quickly as possible. And try and avoid any repeat work. Then hopefully you can still be able to succeed. Of course, situations are different, your bosses are different, opportunities are different, exposure is different, and even character. Our characters are different. Some of us, when somebody is speaking, I'm looking for the point. I mean, what is the point? And and sometimes depending on who you're speaking to, especially domestically, sometimes when my wife is speaking to me, she's not looking for a solution. She just wants to be listened to.
Yeah.
But in terms of work, many times you are looking for what is the issue, what are the risks and the benefits, and what's the solution. So if you're able to grasp the point and move to the solution, then that helps.
Yeah. One of the things I think that a lot of us probably would rue, so to speak, or be sad about, is when we look back and we're like, wow, I wish I utilized that time a bit more efficiently and for useful purposes. In your own experience, what have you, and I don't mean necessarily personal experience, but just living through life, what have you found to be certain wasteful ways in which we utilize our time?
Okay, I think from myself, even when you asked me to come and join you here today on this talk, I looked at the many ways that I don't use my time well, and there are many areas of improvement.
Yeah, even now?
Even up to now. Like when I wake up many times after praying, I still go ahead and look at social media. So I end up wasting time seeing what's going on, and it appears social media, it's profiled in such a way that they bring more exciting stories, or since I support Arsenal, they start showing the replays of the Arsenal match that maybe I watched.
Yeah.
So what benefit do I have seeing the goals 3-4 times? That's another way I waste time, and I need to work on those. So I think the challenge of social media and doing things that you've not programmed is one of the areas majority of us, whether young or old, are losing time. So we need to have some discipline around that. I have some friends who've gone to the extreme who are not even on social media, but I can say I don't necessarily have to watch news nowadays, because everything that is on news, I kind of capture it on social media. So those are some areas of improvement that I need to work on. Then the other area that I think I also need to work on is ability to say no, because I was even debating that all these boards that I am on, am I overstretching myself? There was I think one of the pastor's wife who mentioned to me that it appears I'm always in a hurry, and I never thought about it, but it's chances after this I'll be rushing to another meeting and another one. So I've started reflecting and saying, should I say no to some things and not spread myself too thin? So I think that's another thing we all need to learn, whether it's to other things that are not work-related or work-related, to say my hands are full or I'm not available today. And those are the things I'm working on. Because recently I've just been appointed to another board. That's be the first government board that I'll be joining. It's called the Business Registration Board. And I was called, and they were to have an orientation, I think next week, and I had not planned. I had not planned for it, so I was able to say I'm not able to make it. But beyond that, there are many more that I should start saying that my hands are full, because even on the various Christian ministries I am with BTL, with Capro, with Focus, maybe I need to say, even get another call that right now my hands are full. And so those are the things I'm working on, and even my wife has challenged me to say that she'll be surprised if I say no, because many of the ministry issues I tend to say yes to, but maybe I need to be more intentional and look at my schedule and say that I need to spend quality time in all these organizations and not spread myself too thin.
I like that. And are there other instances, it may not now be at a personal level, but just as you have observed individuals and you're like, that's such a wasteful way of utilizing time, in whatever manner that is presented?
Yes, I have friends who've used their time in the wrong ways, but either they've picked up the habit of over socializing and drinking too much, then later they find they've picked the wrong capabilities of drinking and not spending time with their family. So those are some inefficient ways or the wrong ways to spend time. Others who've loved their career too much and have also not spent time with their families, then you see the kids going wrong, then they are concerned. So that's one of the areas to improve on. Then others have an addiction maybe of golf and want to play golf. And I even know a friend who lost his job because he was too much on the golf course, and then even didn't manage the boss as well, because he was getting a new boss. And instead of going to meet the new boss, he went to play golf. So in the process, he lost his job. So again, that was the wrong usage of time. Golf is a good sport. It keeps you fit. It allows you to socialize. But if you spend too much time in it, then so I've seen all those cases.
You mentioned something interesting where somebody, for example, could focus a bit more on one area and you lose on another. And this whole idea of human beings being balanced individuals. So what would you advise then in terms of our utilization of time, so that I am not prospering in my career and yet my family is affected, or I'm not prospering in my social life and yet my work is affected? What ought we to do so that we sort of have a balanced progression of life?
I think we need to agree on what the priorities are. You need to agree what is your number one, your number two, your number three. And once you agree on your priorities and then your value system, then you're able to balance your time. So if you say your priorities is, you exist, let's say, to worship Christ, then you say, okay, whatever you're doing, are you honoring Christ in whatever you're doing? Then you say you also have primary responsibility for your immediate family, because sometimes in Kenya when you talk of family, it can be extended, but immediate, meaning your wife and your children. So you then focus on them, give them the time. If it is a parents meeting with the teachers, you are there. Unless it's impossible, you are there for those meetings. If it is your wife's birthday and you need to spend time with her, then you spend time with her. So you agree those are your priorities. But since you also need to feed them, you also must make sure that the resources available to feed them are there by achieving the things your bosses and your workplace want you to achieve, depending on what you do in your workplace. If it's a customer who is most important, ensure the customer is happy. If the customer is happy, the company is happy, then hopefully the profits come in and you continue to sustain your job and your pay. Yes.
Okay, I like that whole idea of prioritization. I don't know if you've seen this exercise that is done. Usually it uses rocks, big rocks, small rocks, and then they go reducing till you have very fine sand. And then one is asked to place them in a bucket and what order one uses. And one realizes when you begin with the smaller rocks, then at some point you can't fit anything. And then later you're given a jug of water to still pour in that bucket. And it's interesting that when you begin with the big rocks and you go all the way down to the fine particles, then there's always space that the others can fit in. And then, you can still add water. I find that to be interesting. But one of the other things I would want us to talk about, but I want us to take another song break, is this whole idea now of time as an opportunity. And I will tell you a story of one of the bosses I worked for that helped me appreciate that. But welcome back. This is Motivation Monday, where we bring you challenging conversations and inspiring stories. And it is my hope and prayer, because today we have a guest who combines both the conversation and his story in an interesting manner. We have both the challenging conversation of time and someone who, we can actually learn quite a bit from his journey, especially career-wise, on the whole idea of redeeming your time. My name is Elijah Mokaya, your host. Our guest is Mr. Solomon Osundwa, the Group Chief Operating Officer for Hass petroleum, and what a conversation already we are having. In fact, just help me appreciate, this conversation by responding. Would you say you utilize your time well or not? And why? When you consider how you use your time, would you say you utilize it well or not, and why? 20316 is our SMS line, 0786 316 316 is our WhatsApp line. Would love to hear from you. But for now, let's get back to this conversation. Welcome back, sir. Now, I remember when I was working, before I became a pastor, I used to work in real estate. I'm a realtor by profession, but now I joke and say I left that industry, and now I tell people about mansions in heaven. So same industry, not very different. And one day I was having a conversation with my boss. I don't know what had happened, but the content of the conversation was, he asked me a question. He asked me, what do we trade in here as a company? What do we sell as a company? And because I didn't understand where that question was coming from, I tried being very smart. We sell our expertise, we sell our expert opinion on matters real estate. And later he actually told me, no, we sell time. And what had happened is, I think probably I'd gone for a meeting somewhere far and had taken quite significant amount of time. And he was actually driving the point, you're not utilizing your time well. And right there, I learned this idea of time in itself as being an opportunity, as being a resource. And I want you to just speak into that area. Sometimes when we think about opportunities that we desire, we are thinking of other things, but we never see the fact that we have time as an opportunity and as a resource in itself. Just speak into that space.
Okay, I think there are different ways to look at it, because historically, when you met a lawyer,
yes,
he'd charge you based on the time he has spent on you, because he has costed his time and then valued it in a certain way. Then historically, depending on which lawyer you met, if you met the partner, the charge will be X. If it was a manager, maybe 0.8X, and maybe just a new associate, 0.5X. So again, you paid for the time that you spent with a partner, or depending on the level. In the advertising agencies, it depended. If you went for creative ideas, if it was the creative director developing the idea, you then pay a premium. So, and if it's just a new creative, you'd pay something lower. It's still the same firm, but then they costed their time, because they're able to value time depending on one, the experience, the value, and the time they're spending. So I think it's something that we also need to start being intentional about it, and costing it, and valuing other people's time. Like all the boards or committees that have chaired, if the meeting is to start at 9, it actually starts by 9. If you come late, that's your loss. Nobody will tell you we discussed X, Y, Z, and now you can be brought up to speed. So the meeting continues, because you have to be fair. Let's say you have 20 people in that meeting, and they each lose half an hour. It means you've lost 10 hours. So so we just need to be intentional and agreeing that time, the expression time is money, is real, based on the other examples I've given you, and also just looking at the opportunity cost, because if somebody is meeting with us at a certain time, chances they could have been doing something else that would be of more value. They could be spending time with their family, which you might not be able to price, but it's maybe more valuable than even making profits elsewhere. If you are a pastor, you could be ministering to somebody else and discipling them, which is again more valuable, and it's not possible to put a price on it. So it's just to start saying that time is indeed money, then start valuing it. If it is time that the person could be sleeping is also important. When you work out your day, you should be maybe having 7 to 8 hours of sleep, maybe 8 hours of work, then 8 hours of doing other stuff. So if you're cutting into all those things that are valuable, then you need to say, yes, there's a value, and then maximize that value.
Because you've already mentioned in that that whole third division of 24 hours, you've talked about 8 hours maybe of work, on average, 7 to 8 hours of sleep and 8 hours of doing something else. And I've had a lot of people use that as an encouragement to us utilizing time well. And so kindly just help us appreciate how we can actually see our 24 hours, so to speak, that way.
Yes, I think in terms of, first of all, the theory, you should be sleeping for 7 to 8 hours, the theory. Of course, there are some who sleep for less, and it maybe catches up with them later through health or stress, or the doctor eventually making you rest, so you need to spend time there. And you also need to be active in whatever trade you are in. Spending time in that trade, it might be 8 hours, it might be 10 hours. Then the rest of the hours you need then to be doing other things that are also beneficial. It could be perhaps other activities you're in, it could be exercising, it could be spending time with family, it could be commuting. So it's not that I mapped out my time to be in those ratios, but when I reflect, I think it somehow fits in that. But it's not that I start the year saying that this is the plan, and sometimes depending on the event, I could end up sleeping for 5 hours. There are times I could sleep for 9, but everything else kind of follows that kind of format. And I think we need to be more intentional in resting, in exercising, and even giving your employer or your business the right time. There's something called the equity theory, where when you are paid for what you've not done, you should feel guilty. We read that in the books, but I'm not sure many of us.
I don't think we apply. It seems like if I'm able to get more for less, and I think sometimes, unfortunately, it seems to work both ways. Even bosses seem, if I'm able to get more from you for paying you less, and then I think from the employee's perspective, it works also the other way. If I'm able to get more from the employer while giving less of my time, which is actually sad. But then these two things maybe that you can speak into, the whole idea of commute. Some of us don't have the privilege of, say, driving. And even if you have the privilege of driving, this traffic is crazy. So you're commuting, say, in a matatu, and you live, across town, and it takes you 1 hour, 1.5 hours, but some even 2 hours to get to work. And in the evening, you spend almost an equivalent amount of time. Is there a way that one can leverage that? And then secondly, this other time that remains, you have a bulk of time that is spent in work or school, depending if you're a student or working or in business. Then you have this time of sleeping, but then you have a number of hours here remaining, and whatever number of hours, whether 8 hours, 6 hours, 5 hours, that's not necessarily important. How best also can we utilize that time? Because it seems to me that is where wastage happens. This amount of time that we have, where it doesn't seem like it's demanded. My employer is not demanding, or sleep is not demanding, but I have it. Just speaking to those two things.
Yeah, and it depends on which season you're in, because when you're in even young or older season, you can still pick up a skill. You could be doing your MBA, you could be doing your master's in something else, or you could be doing your first degree, or you can use it just to learn, read, and learn. That extra time you have, you can decide to be a better swimmer if you want to swim. You can decide to be a better athlete if you want to exercise. So you just need to be intentional about the time. But just to take you back on the issue of commute, if you're able, then you should try and reduce your commute. Like myself, where I stay is not too far from where I go to church, it's not too far from where I work, and it's not too far from where my children go to school. I think everything is like a 15 minutes radius. And the reality is the argument could be the price of houses or of accommodation But when you look in whatever radius, both kinds of houses tend to exist. If you want to pay a premium or want to have some decent cost, they're not too far apart. So you can still be intentional about that. Of course, there are challenges where maybe you work near where you stay, but your wife works far. So those challenges are there, and it's not an obvious solution that all of you can get work next to each other. But if you go to countries like the US, for instance, you cannot go to a government school where you're not paying taxes. So you have to be staying in that region where you pay the regional taxes. Then it makes sense. So automatically you end up staying or schooling near where you stay. And so there are those things that you need to be intentional about.
Okay, I like that. Are there tools, so to speak, that are useful for someone out there? You seem to have accumulated quite a bit of knowledge over time, which translated to skill in terms of this whole idea of time. But somebody doesn't know where to begin. Like they're like, I have really wasted my time, and it's a high time I begin being efficient. It's a high time I begin, just utilizing my time well. It's high time I redeem it. Even this 1 month remaining in 2024, I can do something significant. Are there like tools, sort of practical, hands-on things that you can suggest that will be useful?
Okay, I think the first thing you need to do is to maybe just be intentional and measure how you're using your current time. Even before you start correcting, you need to know what you're correcting. So if you can be, I know as Kenyans and Africans, we're not used to journalizing, but just say you woke up at this time, you did this, just try and note that down. Then you can then be able to see the opportunities and why were you spending time in that manner. So if you're able to document, then sometimes you'll see maybe you did this project, then you stopped, then you went back, then you did some procrastination. Then with those, once you've measured, then you can then start saying, okay, I'll try and take corrective action. And sometimes it's not to try and do everything at the same time. After you've measured, there's a concept called the Pareto analysis, the 80-20 rules. So you see, where did I waste 80% of the time? Then spend time working on that 80%. You can live with the other 20% inefficiencies for now. Then later, when you review, whether it's after 6 months or so, maybe the 20% then becomes the 80%. Then you can spend time there. But if you try and fix all the challenges at one go, you might not be able to fix them. But I think the important thing, measure. Then after you measure, take action. And the action is simple. After that, just work on the program. This is the time I will sleep. This is the time I will wake up. This is the time I will eat. There's some benefits of eating early, like those people in the institutions at 6 p.m. There are health benefits, etc. Are you able to do that? But maybe it's not practical. Maybe you reach home at 7:30 or at 8. Then, have your dinner. Then know what you do next. But start measuring, documenting, then taking corrective action. It's simpler than trying to get some software that will then guide your. Then also the goodness of once you've agreed with technology and phones, they have reminders. They'll tell you, is this the time to start reading the book? Is this the time to sleep? You can also just set reminders on your phone and put, then it triggers, because my phone also sometimes reminds me this is the day you want to meet your exercise targets. So you can just put that and use technology to that extent. Okay, I like that. Somebody said that there are several things that are perishable. A tomato is very perishable. A matatu seat is extremely perishable, and a hotel room.
but I don't think they considered time. Is time also a perishable commodity?
Yes, I think time is perishable and irredeemable, because tomatoes, as it starts expiring, you can even convert it to tomato paste. You can make it into tomato sauce, but lost time, you can't recover it. I mean, it's gone and it's gone, and you can only use it as a learning point. You lost that time, and then try and not lose any future time. But basically, that's a lost cost. In fact, what accountants will call a sunk cost. So once you lose time, you've lost it completely. So it's something we need to be to accept, but also not to spend too much energy saying, whining and crying that you've lost that time, because frankly, what will you do about what you've lost in the past? There's nothing. What you need to do is now, how do you work in managing what is ahead of you, and using your talents well, because you're meant to use your talents. If God gave you 5 talents, use them to the maximum. So and also I always tell my team they need to be learning. I give examples like if you are made a lift operator, maybe to get the experience on how to operate that lift and handle an emergency, you need only 1 week's experience, or maybe 2 days experience. But if you've done that for 20 years, you've actually done 2 weeks experience for 20 years. So you're not growing yourself. So I always say, wherever you are, if you feel you're not adding value, you're not learning anything more, strive to learn something more. Maybe that's the only job you can get. But if you're in that lift, you could even start doing another course. After all, you're seated there most of the time. You could listen to audiobooks or write notes, or just learn and use that situation to learn more. But if you're in the same position and not learning anything, then you're also not using your time well, and you're not using your talents well.
Wow, wonderful. Maybe as we conclude in a minute or so, you've probably heard that Chinese saying, I hope it is a Chinese saying, that the best time to have planted a tree was 10 years ago. The next best time is now. So just as you give us your parting shot, and as you respond to that, to anyone now that is considering, I have wasted this so much of my years, is there hope for me? Just speak into that as we begin to wrap up the conversation.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I believe you need to maximize the use of your time. And there's that saying, and there's also, I believe Gandhi, who said, if you don't do something for yourself, who will? So you need to do something for yourself. If you don't do something for others, what are you worth? So you need to do something for others. And if you don't do it now, then when? So you need to do things immediately. So that just shows that time should be used well. And the other thing, when you talk to investors, they tell you, especially in real estate, the best time to invest is now. So you could be crying and saying that properties in 1980 were 100,000 shillings, and now the same property is $1 million. Why didn't I buy it then? Just buy it now. So take action now. It could be an opportunity to start reading the Bible or using your quiet time better. You didn't do that the last 5 years, do it now. So my cry and ask is that all of us should just take action now. Let's not spend energy about yesterday, but focus on tomorrow. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, sir.
It's
been an honor and a privilege having this conversation. Thank you so much for your time. Your time is very valuable, and yet you chose to spend an hour, and if you add, the behind the scenes preparation, more than that with us. And so thank you so much for that. And may the Lord bless you for choosing to give us of your time. Asante sana.
Thank you.
Well, we have come to the end of our conversation for today, and some of what we do here at Motivation Monday is really a teaser, something that appetizes you and nudges you on. And so we may not be able to comprehensively cover this conversation around redeeming your time, but we do pray and hope that you have sufficient motivation to actually have every minute, every hour, every day of your life count. And so will you do that? And will you begin redeeming your time? From today, remember, it is now. Begin now. But before I go, let me just remind you, we are able to continue bringing you programs like this and conversations like this by virtue of donations of men and women like yourself. This 25 years, Family Media has been on air based on your donations. And so this is an encouragement that you consider donating to the work that we do here with whatever amount that you're able and willing to. And so feel free to use paybill number 316 and for account, kindly write your phone number. Until another conversation on Motivation Monday, please utilize your time well now. Redeem your time. See you next Monday.